I'd like to welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this markup for the Subcommittee on Readiness. And the subcommittee will come to order. This subcommittee markup is on the H.R. 4909, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2017. I'd like to begin by thanking the ranking member, Ms. Bordallo, for her tireless effort and participation in this process. I'd like to extend that gratitude to all of the members here today. Thank you so much for what you've done to help guide us through this process of developing this subcommittee on readiness mark. Also, I'd like to thank our staffs who worked diligently to make this mark happen. I'd like to thank Craig Collier, Mike Miller, and Margaret, and Vicki, and Brian for all of your help. And I see Drew over there too, so thanks again for all of your help. They've worked very, very hard. It takes a lot of hours to put this together, and you can tell by what's in the notebook there. There's a lot of effort that goes into this, and we know that they work many long hours and many long hours to come in the weeks ahead. As we all know, the testimony before this subcommittee has confirmed that our military men and women face significant dangers as they continue to operate under the constraints that sequestration and diminished readiness levels have imposed. Here today, we have the responsibility of eliminating those dangers. Our job is to reduce risk for our warfighters by making sure that they are well trained and supported, and that the equipment they use is properly maintained and combat ready. I believe that this mark accomplishes that. The product of bipartisan negotiations, the mark before you incorporates legislative provisions and direct report language that I believe makes significant headway in resolving our most critical readiness concerns. Specifically, this mark prohibits the Department from implementing another round of base realignment and closure in the absence of an accurate end strength assessment. It provides for increased military construction and streamlines the DoD civilian hiring processes so the critical manpower capability gaps can be filled. Further, it directs several assessments of the military department's plan to rebuild readiness, enhance exercises, and modernize training requirements. This mark also makes careful investments to improve readiness and reduce risk. And I'm pleased that it addresses many of the factors that most directly impact our military readiness levels. I'd like to note, however, that these measures will not and cannot entirely resolve our readiness challenges. Because of successive rounds of budget cuts and sequestration, these are issues that will need to remain in our focus for months and even years ahead. We have heard testimony from each of our service branches about the critical necessity to address our nation's military readiness shortfalls. The work done in this subcommittee has resulted in a mark that will bring us closer to achieving full spectrum readiness levels. That is an absolute must if we are to combat and deter the threats to our national security from around the world. It is with that in mind that we proceed today. Again, I'd like to salute my colleagues on the subcommittee as together we take the necessary steps to train and equip our military men and women so that they can confidently and safely perform their missions and protect the homeland. The chair will now recognize Ms. Bordallo, the ranking member on the subcommittee, for any opening comments that she would like to make. Ms. Bordallo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to say that we've had a good year working together, and I want to thank the staff, particularly Vicki and Brian, who work with me on just about a daily basis, and all of you, and I thank my colleagues as well. In a number of committee hearings and roundtables this session, we have heard the service secretaries and chiefs testify that readiness is at a critical juncture. So I have appreciated the opportunity to work with you and our staff to address some of these crucial needs. Through this bill, we seek to improve training proficiency, facility sustainment, restoration, and modernization, and will fill shortfalls in aircraft and ship depot maintenance, service-wide transportation, and weapons system sustainment, among others. As part of our oversight responsibility, we have tasked GAO to provide reports on defective spare parts, F-35 sustainment, the readiness of the Global Response Force, and sustainment of major weapon systems. This subcommittee has worked hard to highlight readiness shortfalls so that we can provide the resources for our military to build back readiness by ensuring our service members have the necessary training and equipment that they need to complete their assigned and anticipated missions. But I am concerned that actions taken elsewhere in the bill may leave our troops short of funding required in future years and may require supplemental funding in fiscal year 2017 to complete their missions. Like the prospective commander of the U.S. Army Pacific, who this week spoke of a shallowing of the depth of the forces needed to reinforce and respond to other crises in the world, I believe that sequestration and the prospect that funding cuts will continue in future fiscal years is much to blame for falling readiness levels. Earlier this year, the subcommittee held a series of hearings on the role that military installations and infrastructure have in generating and supporting readiness. And to that end, I am pleased to see the subcommittee mark includes provisions that provide additional flexibility for the department's investment in laboratory and test and evaluation infrastructure, and clarifies that operation and maintenance funding can be used for facility conversion projects, and streamlines the process for host nation-funded construction while still ensuring congressional oversight of these projects. There are several elements of particular importance for Guam and our broader Asia-Pacific rebalance included in this mark, especially related to the relocation of the Marines. Building on last year's progress, this mark lifts the remaining restrictions on funding for civilian infrastructure projects, consistent with the Department of Defense's request and the record of decision that was published last summer. This mark also holds the Department of Defense accountable to its net negative commitment for Guam, requiring a report on how it will be used to evaluate land return to Guam and its plans for future use of land that it continues to hold on to. As we work toward a permanent basing of the THAAD battery on Guam, I would also like to thank the chairman for agreeing to include language in the bill report that encourages the Army to continue examining how it can implement the total force and associated unit concepts by integrating the Guam Army National Guard into the security force mission. This would produce immediate cost savings while building readiness in defense of the homeland and freeing up active duty manpower for other missions. So again, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the staff. This is a strong mark, and I encourage my colleagues to join me in supporting its passage. And I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Bardalio. Appreciate all of your hard work in this effort, as well as all the members of the staff again. We will now proceed to mark up H.R. 4909, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2017. Without objection, the first reading of this bill is dispensed with. Copies of our subcommittee mark and directive report language were made available and distributed to the members' offices on Tuesday. Is there any discussion or questions on the subcommittee mark? Mr. Scott.
Mr. Chairman, if appropriate, I have concerns with the way, and I'll certainly intend to support the mark, but just want to give you courtesy as the chairman of the committee that the language on page 186 and 187 I feel is biased somewhat against the depots and the report language, and I certainly look forward to continuing the discussion on that.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion? If there is no further discussion, the chair lays before the members the text of the subcommittee mark for consideration. Without objection, the mark is open to any amendment at any point. I'd like to first ask unanimous consent to call up an en bloc package of amendments that have been worked and approved with the minority. Without objection, so ordered. Will the clerk please pass out the amendment? The en bloc package you have before you is comprised of the following: an amendment by Ms. Stefanik in reference to condition-based maintenance on Navy surface ships, an amendment by Ms. Bordallo concerning specific operational contract support matters for joint training campaigns, an amendment by Mr. Whitman to correct locations for 2 Army Reserve projects in the table in Section 2602, and an amendment by Mr. Whitman to strike and replace Section 2402 to make technical corrections to the table in that section. Without objection, the en bloc amendment is before the members. Is there any discussion on the package of amendments? If there's no further discussion on the en bloc amendment, we will move to further consideration. If not, the question that is before us is on adoption of the amendment offered before you. So as many are in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment passes. Are there any other amendments to come before the committee? Hearing none, the question now before us occurs on the adoption of the mark. So many as are in favor of the mark you have before you, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The en bloc amendments and the mark itself are adopted. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Stefanik, for the purposes of a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the subcommittee report the mark as amended favorably to the full committee.
The question is on the motion from the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Stefanik. So many as are in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. A quorum being present, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. And without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Without objection, members have 5 legislative days within which to submit statements to the record. So ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make necessary conforming and technical and clerical changes and to remove from the mark, as amended, provisions that would cause the mark to refer to other committees or would result in additional direct spending or would result in an earmark. Without objection, so ordered. There being no further business to come before the committee, this subcommittee meeting is adjourned.
Did they just give you your playbook or the
Rob.
It's also crap too. Let me ask my staff. I don't, because my name's. You can have it back if you want to. I have no idea. But everything they've written in there, is bullshit. So now you're ready.
You need to read that.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you.